Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. Now, this is the hourly chart of silver provided by netdania.com. You can see here the increase in volume that I've been pointing out, and you can see how much volume we put in there on near the most recent trading day on this downdraft. And you can see it's nearly 1 million contracts. Now, again, I don't know whether these figures are accurate if they're all of the exchanges put together, but if that is 1 million contracts, then we're talking about 5 billion ounces of silver. And if you think about the amount that is available for investment, which is industry takes the most of it, so you're really only talking about 250 million ounces of silver. So 5 billion is about 20 times that. So you're talking about 20 years worth of the silver that can be invested in here. So obviously they're increasing their, you can see the increase in their paper gains here. It's taking more and more ounces of paper to drive the price down. It looks like it may be forming a bottom, but then again, they could hammer it again. So gold, on the other hand, is also increasing. You can see that very, very large increase in volume. And all the while that this is going on, they are significantly hammering the currencies. They are hammering the euro. You can see it's finally getting a small bounce. They've been absolutely killing the yen. And now, just recently, they've taken the Great British pound to the woodshed. So basically all of the currencies that make up the dollar basket, they are coming under severe pressure. And that is good news for the dollar, and some would say bad news for precious metals. You could pull up the charts of the precious metals in the various currencies and see that they're relatively weak, even in the other currencies. So the metals are just weak on their own. But there's the strength in the dollar. Now, why are we seeing this strength? I really don't know the answer to that question. It appears to be that they're organizing some type of dollar rally before some event, perhaps. That would be my guess. I don't know. It's very clear that we're seeing central bank intervention in the currencies to prop up the dollar for whatever reason that might be. So we're looking for a potential silver spike bottom. The best time to buy silver is always going to be on the spike lows, usually because it drops very, very dramatically. And for example, over here and over here. Now, what would a spike look like at this point? It'd have to look like something around 15, because we really have been just bouncing along the bottom. I can't even imagine a spike like one of these. What's that going to take us down to 10 bucks? I can't imagine that price for silver, but stranger things have happened. So I think if there's a spike low, it's probably going to be down to this 15 level will be tested, and then probably a rapid bounce back up. There is quite a bit of support here, and as I pointed out before, this is kind of a falling flag or falling pennant formation. So let's go and look. I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at APMEX, and this is ones that I follow the most. I've given the reasons why in the past that I like the Perth Mint Lunar series so much, and there's a lot of reasons, you know, all those. And I thought it was interesting. I wanted to pull up the Snake series here. This is the 2013 coin. And what's interesting about this one is that you see that APMEX actually has a buy price listed. They usually don't have buy prices listed for their coins, but they do actually show it for this Snake. And you can see that the spread between the bid and the ask on that is absolutely absurd. It's $10. But for the 1 ounce, it's $10 as well. But you can see that they're actually buying this coin for $35. Now, that's an unusual one. Haven't seen anything like that in the past. where I believe that this coin was going for the low 20s, or maybe it was the mid 20s, and you can see that APMEX is buying it back now for 35. So that's very interesting demand on that coin. Let's look at a couple other of the lunar series here. We'll look at the dragon, and I know I was recommending the half ounce and the 2 ounce dragons. Those were the two that I was involved in, just because you remember the pricing on the 1 ounce dragon. They never really came down. I think the lowest price they ever came down at one point was like $45. So they started off in the 90s, and they couldn't really sell that many of them. You can see the one with the lion privy now is $59.99. They have a buy price for the 1 ounce here of $40, and they don't have any. So that's a positive sign for those that pick them up. There isn't a buy price on this 2 ounce dragon. That was the one that I was watching really carefully, but you can see that their ask price is significantly higher. I think I picked mine up for around $62 to $64 when I was buying them, and so that's a very strong double there in a short amount of time. So it seems to me that the lunar series is still, even in the face of this downdraft that we're looking at, the lunar series is still holding up fairly well. Here's the 2014 horse series, and you can see this one, if you're willing to buy 100 or more, let's see how many they have. If you're willing to buy 100 or more, you can get that for $13.81. So that's a really good price. Now the 1 ounce still hasn't come down. I think this is the same price that I bought them for when they first were listed. So that's nearly a year ago that these were selling for about $36, and you can see they're sitting there at about the same thing. The buy price is $27.05. Now, someone had mentioned on the membership site that they had heard that the sales for Perth Mint were very, very slow, and that would be a very good thing, considering that there's already a very low number of these lunar series coins out there, and if they had a poor year, we know that Perth, except for certain series, they mint them to demand. There's other ones that have like a dedicated 300,000 that they do automatically, but there's others that, especially the ones that are the odd lots, like the half ounce and the 2 ounce, those are pretty much just minted to demand. And if the demand is very low, then obviously the mintage is going to be very low. And at some point, if the demand increases in the future, people perhaps just trying to top off their collections or something to have each coin, then that can create significant demand if those numbers are really low. So that's what's going on with the lunar series. I would definitely right now be looking at this half ounce horse. That seems to me the best deal that's out there, even though we're talking $4.49 over spot. But then again, if you're looking for just straight silver play, you could probably get the cheapest rounds, Buffalo rounds or something like that, for maybe a little bit $1 over spot. And if you're looking for a spike down low, maybe you might be able to pick up some silver for, say, $17. That's maybe. So I wanted to take you over this story. This is a story that's making the rounds, and this is the kind of craziness that we see with these central banker run economies that we have now, where the central bankers are planning these economies and making a giant mess of them. So this is the latest trial balloon being floated out there. You know something is a trial balloon when you see it hit various mainstream media sources all at the same time, especially something that hasn't been talked about that much, and then all of a sudden everyone's running a story on it. You know that it's a trial balloon. You can also, which I frequently do, you can check Google Trends and see how these things just pop on the scene. And so obviously the stories in the mainstream media are contrived and they're all planned. But this is the latest trial balloon they're floating, this basic income idea. And it's absolutely shocking to me that people are taking this idea seriously. Basically, they just propose that the way they're going to fix all the problems is just to give people money. I'll start reading. In recent months, discussion of basic income proposals have become fairly mainstream, but not so mainstream that most people know what the phrase basic income means. With that in mind, here are the basics. Get it? The idea in 11 questions. What is basic income? Basic income is shorthand for a range of proposals that share the idea of giving everyone in a given polity a certain amount of money on a regular basis. A basic income comes with no categorical eligibility requirements. You don't have to be blind or disabled or unemployed to get it. Everyone gets the same amount by virtue of being human with material needs that money can help address. Wow. There are a number of different names this idea has gone by over the years. Universal basic income and basic income guarantee are used frequently. Guaranteed minimum income and negative income tax are generally used to refer to versions of the plan that also impose a tax that gradually eats up the cash transfer as a means of reducing the cost of the policy. Demogrant was popular in the 70s, and citizens' dividend and social wage get used from time to time. And then we get to see who supports it. So we know that the conservatives support it because they're quoting Milton Friedman, who, by the way, was not a libertarian and certainly not laissez-faire and certainly not an Austrian, but they have to start out by trotting out a conservative there. And we find out that James Tobin and Kenneth Galbraith and Martin Luther King supported it. Here's an interesting statement here. Activists and scholars Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven, remember the Cloward and Piven Society, or strategy to destroy the capitalist system in the West by creating so many demands on the welfare state that it collapses upon itself. Authored an influential article in The Nation in 1966, which called for a national movement of the poor with the intended goal of achieving a basic income. More academically left philosophers, etc., etc. So they're trying to convince us that the right and the left are in favor of it. Has it been implemented anywhere? Well, not exactly. Maybe it was in the Soviet Union. I don't know. So wouldn't it destroy the economy? A common concern with basic income proposals is the worry that they destroy incentives to work. Really? You mean if you pay me whether I work or not, I might not go to work? If people no longer need to work to afford an apartment and food and other life necessities, then it stands to reason that the incentive one has to get a job or to work a given number of hours on a job would be reduced. Now let's look at this. This is what they're, I guess they're not giving a number because these leftists never give a number because then it would be easy to debunk it. We know that if you just give the number of 10,000, if you had 200,000 people, or I'm sorry, 200 million people at 10,000, then that's $2 trillion. That's all the tax revenues in the entire budget. And that's just $10,000 per person for 200 million people, so excluding children. We can see that that eats up everything we have right there. So, but let's look at this, what they're including in here. An apartment, food, and other life necessities. So is that perhaps, let's say maybe, we'll be on the conservative side and say maybe $600 or $700 a month for your apartment. Then your food's going to be another $300 or $400. Then the other life necessities, maybe another $500. So we're talking about maybe $1,500 a month is what this would have to be if it's going to provide those things. And $1,500 a month comes to about $18,000 a year. So at $18,000 a year, we're talking about $3.6 trillion for everyone. And if we cut that in half, then we're talking $1.8 trillion, and the rest are working, I suppose, to pay for that. So you can see how silly of an idea this is. Most of the rest of this is just propaganda. It's really shocking to see that the West has begun to swallow these Marxist theories here. Now, here's a theory that is bandied about often. This is about the robots, and this is another reason they give why we have to have this, because there's going to be so much joblessness caused by robotics and automation, which of course is just a bogus argument. It never has in the past, and it just creates a lot of jobs for people who have to work on the robots. My job is working on internet technologies, and there's a very large demand for people to fix these machines. So the more machines you have, the more machines or more people you have to have working on the machines. So these arguments, of course, they've never held water. But the best explanation of why they don't hold any water is that when we look at Asia and certain countries, for example, I've already shown the unemployment statistics in those countries, but certain highly technical societies like South Korea, Taiwan, parts of China, their unemployment levels are down around 1% and 2%. So this argument doesn't hold any water. This is just something that the left trots out because they want to increase the welfare state. Many analysts believe that improvements in artificial intelligence and robotics will decrease the demand for human labor going forward. Whether or not that'll happen is disputed, with skeptics noting that centuries of technological improvement have thus far failed to permanently reduce employment levels. No, what's permanently reduced employment levels in Europe and in America now and in Great Britain and the rest of these countries is socialism, which it appears to be they want a lot more of. But if this time is different and automation leaves a huge chunk of working age adults unemployed, a basic income would prevent mass suffering among those left out. It would essentially mean taxing the owners of the robots to support the people who are put out of work by them. Okay, so you can read the rest of it. It's not a very deep article. It's just another trial balloon that they're floating out here, trying to get people to believe that something that only Marxists could believe, that money grows on trees and that we can have a paradise where nobody has to work. The only reason that people work is because they want to work, and all the people that don't want to work can just simply live off their basic income stipend. Of course, we know that's not what's going to happen. We know that if anything like this is instituted, which we already have things like it, we know that the desires of Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven are going to come about, which is the complete bankruptcy of the West, which is what they desire because they want to replace it with some type of totalitarian system. I'm afraid if people buy into this sort of scheme, then that time will probably come a lot faster than we think. So back to the silver chart, we're looking for a breakdown of that test to 15. The volume is getting very high. You can see the only other time was on this breakdown when we broke down through that 26 level, but we had a test before with this sort of volume, and now we're coming up on another area of very high volume. Will that be accompanied by a drop down here on even higher volume? I suspect that if it is, that we'll have a very short time to stack before it bounces right back up, and we'll talk to you next time.